The great crystal gates of the Dravani throne hall opened with a sound like thunder. Chains clinked against the shining floor as the human was dragged inside by two tall guards in silver armor. He walked slowly, his steps heavy, his body bruised and weak. Yet his eyes, they were calm in a way that made even the guards uneasy. The hall was filled with thousands of Dravani soldiers and nobles. Their glowing blue eyes followed every move he made. They had never seen a human before, not a living one. The species called humanity had been destroyed years ago, wiped out when Earth fell under alien fire. The one who stood before them was said to be the last. At the far end of the hall stood the throne, carved from shining glass, surrounded by pillars that pulsed like living veins of light. Upon it sat Queen Saralith of the Dravani Empire, the most feared being in the galaxy. Her silver hair floated like strands of starlight, and her skin shimmered faintly in shades of blue and white. Her beauty was cold, powerful, and dangerous, like a blade of ice. When her gaze fell upon the human, the room went silent. Even the guard stopped breathing. The queen leaned forward slightly. Her voice was soft, but it carried through the hall like a storm. "Human," she said, "you have killed 30 of my soldiers, destroyed 2 of my ships, and dared to trespass into the heart of my empire. Tell me, why do you fight when your species no longer exists?" The man's head lifted slowly. There was blood on his lip, dust on his face, and exhaustion in every breath he took. Yet his eyes, brown, steady, unbroken, met hers without fear. He spoke quietly, his voice rough but firm. "Because someone has to remember what it means to be human." His words echoed across the hall. For a moment the silence was so deep that even the air seemed to hold still. Queen Saralith blinked, as if struck by something she couldn't explain. That voice, those words, they felt familiar, like an echo from a dream she once had long ago before she became queen, before war turned her heart to stone. "Remember," she repeated softly, almost to herself. The nobles whispered angrily, "He defies the queen. He should be executed. He is an animal." But Saralith raised her hand and the hall fell silent again. She stood, tall and graceful, her long silver robe shimmering in the light of the throne. She walked down the steps until she stood face to face with the prisoner. He looked up at her, the most powerful being in the galaxy, and didn't bow, didn't plead, didn't break. "What is your name?" she asked quietly. He hesitated for a moment, then answered, "Elias." Saralith stared at him for a long time. The name stirred something deep within her, something buried, something lost in the centuries of blood and war. A strange warmth flickered in her chest, one she had almost forgotten how to feel. Finally she turned away. "Take him to the crystal cell," she ordered. "Do not harm him." The guards looked confused but obeyed. Chains rattled again as they led Elias away. As the great doors closed behind him, Saralith stood alone before her throne, her silver eyes distant. She whispered under her breath, "Elias," as if tasting the name. It felt heavy with memories she did not understand. Outside, the stars burned quietly beyond the palace dome, and the hum of the empire continued. But within the queen's heart, something had shifted, and something small, fragile, but alive. And deep within the cold crystal cell far below, Elias sat in the darkness, staring at the faint reflection of the stars through the ceiling glass. He smiled faintly despite the chains on his hands. "At least," he murmured, "someone still remembers." Neither of them knew it yet, but that night the fate of 2 worlds had begun to change. The nights in the Dravani palace were always silent. The halls of silver and glass stood still under the soft light of 2 moons. But that night Queen Saralith couldn't sleep. Her mind kept returning to the human, the one who had looked into her eyes and spoken those strange, fearless words. She had seen countless enemies in her life, warriors, assassins, even traitors, but none had ever spoken with such calm, such quiet fire. Something about him was different. Something about him felt familiar, and so, against every rule, against the warnings of her advisors, Saralith descended to the lower levels of the palace, to the crystal cell. The air was cold there. The light was dim and blue. The human sat alone inside the transparent prison, his back against the wall, his hand still bound by faintly glowing chains. Yet even in that stillness he looked strangely peaceful, like someone who had already made peace with the world. Saralith stepped closer. The guards bowed quickly and stepped aside. Her voice was quiet but strong. "Leave us." The guards hesitated. "My queen, it is unsafe." "Leave," she repeated, her tone leaving no room for argument. When they were gone, the hall fell into silence again. The only sound was the slow hum of energy around the crystal bars. Elias opened his eyes when he heard her steps. "Back again?" he said softly. Saralith frowned. "You speak as if you expected me." He gave a faint smile. "You don't look like someone who forgets things easily." The queen studied him for a long time. His face was tired, but his eyes held a quiet strength that pulled at something deep inside her. "Why did you come here, Elias? You could have hidden. You could have run." He looked down for a moment, then spoke in a low voice. "I came because I wanted to see if the stories were true. The stories about the queen who ended the war, the one who spared worlds when everyone else demanded fire. I wanted to see if there was still mercy left in this galaxy." His words hit her harder than she expected. Mercy. It had been a long time since anyone had spoken that word to her. The galaxy did not believe she had any. Saralith stepped closer to the crystal wall. "And what do you think now, human?" "Do you see mercy in me?" Elias looked up. His gaze met hers through the clear barrier. "I don't know," he said simply. "But I see sadness." She froze. No one had ever spoken to her like that. No one had ever dared to look at her and see sadness instead of fear or power. For a moment, the centuries of her reign felt heavy. Every battle, every death, every lonely night sitting on a throne of victory that never brought peace. Saralith turned away, but before she left she whispered, "You speak too boldly for a prisoner." Elias smiled faintly. "And you listen too often for a queen." Her steps faltered and then she was gone. That night she didn't return to her chambers. Instead, she stood on her balcony watching the stars. The name Elias echoed in her mind again and again. Something about it stirred memories she couldn't place. Visions of another time, another man standing under the same stars, saying her name in a voice full of warmth. The next night she went to the cell again, and the night after that, she began asking him questions. About Earth, about oceans, about music, about what humans dreamed of. He told her about laughter, about sunsets that turned the sky gold, about the smell of rain. Each time he spoke, Saralith listened like a child hearing the world for the first time. His words painted pictures in her mind, colors and feelings that her cold empire had long forgotten. And when she left the cell that night, she felt something she had not felt in centuries. The ache of longing. She touched her heart, surprised to feel it beating faster. The queen of the Dravani, conqueror of galaxies, was beginning to remember what it meant to feel alive. Days turned into weeks, and every night Queen Saralith found herself walking down the cold, shining corridors of her palace toward the crystal cell where Elias waited. She told herself it was only curiosity, that she wanted to understand her enemy. But deep down she knew it was something else. Something she couldn't explain. Each night they talked. She listened to his stories about the blue skies of Earth, about the scent of flowers, about the feeling of soft rain touching his skin. For a queen who had known only the silence of space and the noise of war, his words felt like light breaking through darkness. Elias, in turn, learned things about her world. He learned that the Dravani lived for centuries, their lives bound by duty and order. They did not laugh often. They did not cry. They did not love the way humans did. Saralith had ruled for 300 years, her reign built on peace and fear. She was both worshipped and alone. One night, while the moons glowed softly through the glass ceiling, Elias finally asked, "Why do you come here, Sarilith?" The queen stood silent for a long moment, her face hidden behind her silver hair. Then she said quietly, "Because you remind me of someone I once knew, someone I lost long ago." Elias tilted his head. "Someone you loved?" Her eyes flickered with old pain. "Yes, a human." Elias froze. "A human?" Sarilith nodded slowly. "1,000 years ago, before your people vanished into the stars, there was one who came to my world. He was a soldier, a wanderer, a man of courage and kindness. When the great plague struck my people, he stayed. He saved lives when everyone else ran. He taught me compassion, taught me to see life in all its forms." Her voice grew softer, almost breaking. "He died in my arms after saving my world. His name was Elias." Elias felt his breath catch. His heart pounded. "Elias?" he repeated, voice trembling. "Yes," she said, her eyes distant, filled with memories that refused to fade. "Before he died, he looked at me and said, 'Don't cry, Sarilith. I'll find my way back to you, one way or another.'" For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The silence was heavy, filled with something far larger than words. Elias finally said softly, "And now you think that's me?" The queen shook her head slowly. "I don't know. It's foolish, impossible. But when I look at you, when I hear your voice, my heart remembers." Elias's hands trembled slightly as he touched the crystal wall that separated them. The surface was cold, but when he placed his palm against it, the markings on her wrist, glowing silver tattoos that symbolized royal blood, began to pulse faintly. Sarilith looked down, startled. The light from her skin throbbed in rhythm with his heartbeat. "What is happening?" Elias whispered. The queen stared at her wrist, then at him. "This has not happened for centuries. These marks respond only to one thing, the soul it is bound to." Their eyes met, and for the first time Sarilith looked afraid. Not of him, but of what she was feeling. "I buried him 1,000 years ago," she said softly. "But now, every time I see you, every time you speak, I feel like the universe has brought him back." Elias didn't know what to say. His memories of his life were blurry, fragments of war, light and fire. He had always felt there was something missing, something calling him. Maybe it was her. Maybe it had always been her. Sarilith turned away, trying to hide the tears gathering in her eyes. "You are my prisoner," she whispered, "and yet when I look at you I feel as if I am the one trapped." Elias smiled faintly. "Maybe we both are." For a long time neither spoke again. The glow from her wrist dimmed slowly, leaving the cell in soft blue light. Outside, the stars shimmered above the palace, distant, eternal, as if they too were keeping a secret that even time could not erase. And in that quiet place, two souls, divided by centuries and war, began to remember the promise that once tied them together. The peace inside the palace did not last long. One morning, the soft hum of the Dravani capital was broken by the sound of sirens echoing across the skies. The great walls of light that protected the city began to flicker. Every tower trembled. The stars outside the dome were filled with the dark shapes of warships. The Vorak Empire had returned. The same ruthless species that had destroyed Earth. The same monsters that had once forced Sarilith's people into endless wars. Queen Sarilith stood on the balcony of her throne room, her long silver hair waving in the wind as explosions flashed in the sky. "So," she whispered bitterly, "history repeats itself." Her council rushed in behind her, shouting in panic, "My queen, the Vorak fleet is larger than anything we've seen before. They are already in orbit. We must evacuate the capital." But Sarilith did not move. Her eyes burned with cold fire. "No," she said calmly. "We do not run." Down below in the crystal prison, Elias heard the alarms too. The sound shook the floor beneath him. Through the glass walls he could see flashes of red light, the mark of battle. He clenched his fists, his instincts coming alive once more. War was something every human knew too well. Moments later, the door opened and Saralith herself entered the cell. There were no guards this time. Her face was calm, but her eyes were full of storm. "Elias," she said quietly. "The Vorak are here." He looked at her, surprised. "The Vorak? The ones who destroyed my world?" She nodded. "Yes, they come for me now." "Then why are you here?" Elias asked. "You should be commanding your army." Her voice softened. "Because I won't let you die in a cage." Before he could answer, she raised her hand and the glowing chains vanished. The crystal bars dissolved into mist. Elias was free. For a moment he just stared at her. "You're freeing me? Even now?" "I have made many mistakes," she whispered. "But I will not repeat the one I made 1,000 years ago." Elias took a deep breath and nodded. "Then let me fight with you." Her eyes widened. "You would fight for us? For the people who took everything from yours?" He looked at her steadily. "I don't fight for empires. I fight for promises." Something inside her broke and healed at the same time. Without another word, she led him through the shining halls toward the war room. As they moved, the palace shook again. The enemy had broken through the outer defenses. Dravani soldiers rushed past them, shouting, their silver armor reflecting the fires of war. Some stared at Elias in confusion, others in fear. A human walking beside their queen was a sight none had ever imagined. At the command deck, Saralith placed her hand on the control crystal. A large holographic map appeared, showing hundreds of enemy ships surrounding the planet. Elias studied it quickly, his soldier's mind coming alive. "They're focusing on your power cores. If they destroy those, the entire planet falls." She turned to him, surprised. "You understand our systems?" He smiled faintly. "War is the same everywhere. You just change the color of the blood." Despite the chaos, Saralith felt herself smile back. "Then help me save my world, Elias." He nodded. "Tell me what to do." Together they formed a plan, a desperate one. Elias would take command of an old Dravani gunship, one that still used manual control. He would lead a small fleet through the lower orbit and strike at the Vorak command ship. When the Queen's Council heard this, they protested loudly. "A human? He cannot be trusted." But Saralith silenced them with a glare. "He has already earned more trust than any of you." As Elias prepared to leave, Saralith stepped closer. For the first time, she seemed uncertain. "If you go out there, you might not return." He looked at her gently. "You once told me a man promised to find his way back to you. Maybe it's time I keep that promise." Her silver eyes glistened. "Then may the stars watch over you, my human." As he turned and walked toward the hangar, the Queen stood in silence, her heart beating faster than ever. She was the ruler of 1,000 worlds. Yet in that moment, she realized something simple and painful. She feared losing him more than losing her crown. And outside, the stars trembled, waiting for the return of a human who was never meant to exist. The war began like a storm tearing through the stars. The black space above the Dravani capital filled with flashes of red and gold as ships collided, laser beams cutting through the darkness like rivers of fire. Elias stood inside the cockpit of the old Dravani gunship, its controls strange, glowing with alien symbols. Yet his hands moved with ease as if guided by something deep inside him. The hum of the engines matched the beat of his heart. He could almost feel the stars listening. "Human vessel ready," came a voice through the comm. "Awaiting your command." Elias smiled faintly. "Let's remind them that humanity still fights." He pushed the throttle forward. The gunship burst into the sky, leaving a trail of light behind it. From the palace tower, Queen Saralith watched as his ship joined the Dravani fleet. Her soldiers fought bravely, but the Vorak were many. Their massive warships surrounded the planet like vultures. She stood on the command bridge, her voice calm but her eyes burning with worry. "Focus on their power cores," she ordered. "Protect the city at all costs." But inside, her thoughts were not on the battle. They were with him. Far above, Elias dove through enemy fire, weaving between burning ships. "Come on," he muttered. "I've seen worse skies." He fired a burst of plasma, striking the nearest Vorak cruiser. The explosion painted the void in white light. Dravani soldiers cheered across the channels. The human fights like a storm. Yet even victory came with pain. Every time Elias looked out at the burning horizon, he remembered Earth. The cities turned to dust, the oceans on fire. He fought not only for the Queen's world, but for all that was lost. Hours passed and the battle grew worse. The Vorak unleashed a giant dreadnought, its shadow covering the sky. It fired once, and an entire Dravani squad vanished in a flash. Elias cursed under his breath. "That thing's the core of their fleet." He turned his ship toward it. "Elias." Saralith's voice came through the comm, her tone urgent. "Stay back. That ship will destroy you." He smiled softly, his voice calm. "You said you wanted your world to live. Let me do this." She gripped the edge of her console. "Don't you dare throw your life away." But he only said, "Sometimes life isn't about living forever. It's about what you live for." Her throat tightened. "Elias, please." He cut the channel and flew straight into the chaos. Missiles streaked past him. The hull shook violently. Warning lights flashed across the controls, but he didn't stop. His hands moved faster, his heart racing in rhythm with the burning stars outside. The dreadnought's main gun began to charge, glowing red, humming with deadly power. Elias took aim, whispering to himself, "Just like old times." He released every weapon his ship had, plasma beams, missiles, flares, all of it striking the dreadnought's weak point. The explosion lit up the sky like a second sun. For a moment it looked like victory, but the blast wave hit him hard. His ship spun out of control, alarms screaming. Smoke filled the cockpit. He tried to steady it, but the controls were dead. "Elias!" Saralith's voice came through the static. "Elias, answer me!" He smiled weakly, blood trickling from his forehead. "Still here, just not for long." Saralith's voice broke, trembling with fear and pain. "Hold on, I'm sending a ship to get you." "No," he whispered. "Keep your forces safe. You can't risk your life for me." Tears filled her eyes. "You don't understand. You're not just a soldier to me." He closed his eyes, hearing her voice fade through the crackling static. "I think I do." The ship plunged toward the planet's surface, burning as it fell. Saralith watched helplessly from the palace tower, her hands trembling. She had faced death, war, and darkness for centuries, but nothing felt like this pain in her chest. As the wreck disappeared in a blaze of light, the Queen whispered his name, her voice breaking. "Elias." Around her, her people cheered as the Vorak fleet began to retreat. They called her victorious, the savior of their world. But she did not feel like a savior. She felt like a woman who had lost something far more precious than victory. Far across the battlefield, a single shard of the destroyed ship glowed faintly among the ruins, pulsing with a soft, rhythmic light like the beating of a human heart. The battlefield was silent now. The stars above the Dravani capital were covered by smoke and drifting fire. The Vorak fleet had been destroyed, and the skies were filled with falling debris, glowing like dying stars. The war was over, but victory did not feel like victory. Queen Saralith stood at the edge of the palace balcony, her silver armor torn, her face stained with dust and tears. She looked out at the burning sky, searching for a sign, any sign, of the human who had saved her world. "Elias," she whispered. No answer came. Only the soft hum of the damaged palace walls and the distant cries of soldiers tending to the wounded. They told her his ship had fallen somewhere beyond the capital, lost in the mountains. Search parties had been sent, but all they found were fragments of metal, scorched, broken, lifeless. Her council praised her for her leadership. They called her the queen who saved the Dravani Empire. They bowed, they celebrated, they sang her name, but she could not hear any of it. Her heart felt hollow, her thoughts lost in the voice of a man who no longer answered her. That night, when the palace was quiet, Saralith went alone to the crash site. The ground there was blackened, the air thick with smoke. Among the wreckage she found what remained of the human gunship, a twisted skeleton of metal and glass. And there, buried under shards of crystal, she found something glowing faintly. It was a small broken fragment of the ship's control crystal, and within it, a pulse of light. Slow, steady, like a heartbeat. She knelt beside it, her hands trembling as she lifted it close. The light warmed her skin. It was faint but alive. Her voice broke into a whisper. "Elias, is that you?" The crystal pulsed once, brighter. She gasped, her tears falling freely now. For the first time in centuries, Queen Seralith, the ruler of 1,000 worlds, the woman who had never bowed, fell to her knees. She held the glowing shard against her chest, pressing it close to her heart. "I won't lose you again," she whispered. Not this time. Days passed. She brought the crystal back to the palace, placing it in her private chamber. It glowed there, faintly alive, as if breathing. Every night she would sit beside it, speaking softly to it, telling stories, whispering memories as if Elias could still hear her through the light. Her scientists begged her to let them study it. They said it was just energy, just remnants of the ship's power core, but she refused. "It is not energy," she told them. "It is him." They thought she had gone mad, but she did not care. Then one night, as the moon shone pale across her window, the crystal flared brighter than ever before. The air in the room grew warm, alive. Seralith froze, her heart racing. The light grew, spreading like fire across the walls, and then faintly a voice came through the air. "Seralith." Her breath caught. The voice was soft, weak, but it was his. She ran to the crystal, her hands shaking. "Elias, Elias, is that you?" The light pulsed again, and she saw it. A faint outline, a shadow within the glow. It was the shape of a man, his head bowed, his body made of light and memory. "I told you," the voice whispered. "I'd find my way back." Her tears fell freely as she reached toward the light. "You kept your promise," she said, her voice trembling. "Even death couldn't take you from me." The light flickered gently, wrapping around her like a soft warmth. "I'm still here," the voice said. "Not as before, but as part of you, of this world. You saved them, Seralith. You gave them hope. That's what I always believed in." She closed her eyes, her hands trembling. "Don't leave me again, Elias. Please." The light grew softer, like a fading heartbeat. "I'll never leave you," the voice said. "Not while you remember me." And then slowly, the crystal dimmed. Not gone, but resting. Seralith sat there in silence, holding it against her heart. The tears on her cheeks shimmered in the moonlight, but her lips carried a small, fragile smile. In that quiet moment, she understood. He wasn't lost. He had become part of the stars, part of her, part of the promise that even across death and time, love could return. Years passed. The Dravani Empire healed slowly, rebuilding from ashes into something new, something peaceful. Queen Seralith ruled with wisdom and compassion. Her people no longer feared across the stars, but respected. Her name became a symbol of unity. Yet behind her calm smile and regal crown, her heart still carried a quiet ache, the memory of the human who had changed her world. Every morning, before the council meetings began, she would visit the small chamber at the top of her palace. There, the faintly glowing crystal still rested on a pedestal made of silver and stone. Its light was softer now, gentle and calm, like a sleeping heart. She would place her hand on it, close her eyes, and whisper softly, "Good morning, Elias." It was her secret ritual, one that kept her going. But one dawn, as the sky turned golden and the twin suns rose together, something changed. The crystal, which had remained quiet for years, suddenly flickered brighter. The light spread across the room, warm and alive, filling every corner. Seralith froze, her breath caught in her throat. Her pulse raced as she whispered, "Elias?" The light pulsed again, stronger this time, and then a shape began to form. A tall figure made of light and shadow stood before her. His outline was faint at first, but his face and his eyes, they were unmistakable, It was him, Saralith. The voice came softly, almost like the wind through her hair. Her hand covered her mouth as tears welled up. She took a trembling step forward. "It's you, Elias. It's really you." He smiled. That same small human smile that once made her heart flutter in the middle of chaos. "I told you I'd never leave you," he said gently. "But it took me a while to find the way back." She reached out, afraid to touch him, afraid he would vanish again. But when her hand brushed against his form, she felt warmth. Real warmth. His fingers, made of light, wrapped gently around hers. For the first time in years, she felt peace. "I thought I lost you," she whispered. "I searched every world, every dream. I would have traded my throne to see you once more." He looked at her with a tenderness that made her knees weak. "You never lost me," he said softly. "You carried me inside you, in your heart, in your hope. That's what brought me back." She closed her eyes, tears falling freely. "Elias, you changed everything. The Dravani. They live in peace now. I made them see what you saw. That life, no matter how different, deserves to be protected." He smiled faintly. "Then you did what I couldn't. You gave them what humanity always tried to give. A reason to care." For a moment, silence filled the room. A silence full of meaning, full of love that crossed death and time. The two of them stood there, surrounded by the golden light of morning. Then Elias stepped closer. His light shimmered, brighter and stronger. "Saralith," he said softly, "I don't have long. This form, it's only a memory given shape. But before I go, there's something I never got to do." She looked up at him, her heart aching. "What is it?" He reached out and gently pulled her close. The light wrapped around her like a warm sunrise, soft and alive. His arms felt real, his touch firm and gentle, and then he embraced her. For a single, perfect moment, time stopped. She could hear his heartbeat, feel his warmth, smell the faint scent of earth and rain, the scent of humanity. Her tears fell onto his chest, vanishing into light. He whispered into her ear, his voice steady and full of love. "I finally found you, my queen. Hi, Saralith." Her voice broke as she whispered back, "And I've finally found you, my human." The light began to fade slowly, but the warmth stayed. She clung to him as long as she could, not out of fear, but gratitude. When the glow finally dimmed, all that remained was the soft crystal, now glowing brighter than ever before, like a star captured in her hands. Saralith stood there in silence, the sunlight touching her face. She smiled, not with sadness, but peace. She knew he was not gone. He was within every sunrise, every star that shone above her world. That night, as she looked up at the sky, she saw a new star burning brighter than the rest. She raised her hand and whispered softly, "Good night, Elias." And in that endless sea of stars, one light seemed to flicker in reply, as if the universe itself smiled back.